they want to see is LeBron go through and put Nurkic on a poster. I can't do that. You know what I mean? That's what the casual fan wants to see. And I think lowering the rim, you're giving them that.
Yes, you can appreciate the actual act of dunking, but I think there would probably always be like a little asterisk that carries them around. It's like you can do that, but you can do that on a shorter rim.
So let's transition a little bit since we're talking about ratings.
Mhm.
How about the WNBA? So the WNBA, now, let's talk about it. A lot of people feel as if the WNBA doesn't get the credit it deserves. The players don't get the credit they deserve. They don't get the monetary compensation they deserve. Let
Big
let me
discrepancy.
start off with this. Big, there is a big discrepancy. There is a big discrepancy. Okay, why don't we just? I'll let you lead it off. How do you feel about that? There is a big monetary discrepancy. How do you feel about that?
I think the WNBA is a work in progress. I think it needs some love and some attention, but I do think that there is talent in there that can. I don't think anything will ever eclipse the NBA. But in terms of like a big brother, little sister, I guess is kind of what it would be in this sense. I think they could be a strong face for basketball in general. And I think that if we kind of lift the WNBA a bit more, then I think we could just be more exciting in general. It could be more in tandem. NBA would never be eclipsed for sure, but I think it could just be more in tandem where like the women are represented a lot better, paid better. Little girls have something to look forward to as well, or to aspire to. And you know, NBA was here first. They did it well, but I think that there's room for both of us to share the stage.
Okay, I agree. Okay, so let's talk about it a little
Mhm.
bit. So Angel Reese, she was definitely in
Mhm.
headlines a little bit, and I'm not going to get too deep into that controversy. But what I will say is that she made a statement where she said that she's not too in a rush to go to the WNBA. Women players obviously have to play 3 years of college before declaring for the draft. She said she's not too in a rush to go to the WNBA because she's making more off of NIL deals, name, image, and
Yeah.
likeness, than a lot of like just casual WNBA players are making in the league, in a professional league.
And
How do you feel about that?
it broke my heart because as happy as I am that college athletes now, not just her, but college athletes in general get to actually like make bank off of their name and their own likeness. Um,
As they
as they
should.
should, exactly as they should, because not everyone's going to go to the league, but that doesn't mean that while you're in college, you don't exactly play well. You have things like injuries or just life in general that just kind of come through that may prevent them from going all the way, or maybe they're just a solid player, but they're not NBA or WNBA like level. Um, so make your money while you can. No disrespect for that, but it kind of also made me think about, okay, they already have to wait a little bit longer than the guys do to go into the league. But then also, how many?
I don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean to cut
Uh-huh.
you off. I don't mean to cut you off, but they're right. They do have to wait 3 years at least before declaring for the draft. The NBA, you only have to do 1 year of college or 1 year essentially out of high school, whatever capacity that is, before you go to the league. Do you feel like that's fair?
No, I think that
Why not?
in general, I think that going into a woman's world of just a lot of things can kind of play into their whole career, the length of their career. I think that's a little bit unfair that to make them wait even longer. So you're coming in at what, 22 really, which is still young. They can still go a lot of years just playing, but I think for women when there's a something like a time clock, right? You want to build a family or whatever, things like that, it's a little bit unfair. If I guess to me, I don't understand what the difference is between the men and the women if they're still playing collegiate level. why do they have to wait much longer? Um, and
I'll throw my caveat in there.
mhm,
And I'm gonna let you get back to your original point.
okay.
To me personally, so I tuned into the national championship game, LSU versus Iowa, like most people.
Mhm,
Uh, this is the national championship game.
mhm.
So these are the two best teams in women's
Right,
basketball, LSU and Iowa.
right.
I saw at least 7 travel calls that I can think
Mhm.
of off the top of my head. There's a skill gap.
Okay.
There is a skill gap. There's a skill gap between the men's league and the women's league.
Mhm,
I think that the 3 years for women to stay in college could be to develop them more as players. And I don't think this is just necessarily like women aren't as good. I feel like the men's college should be maybe not 3. I think 3 for either league is a little excessive, but maybe 2, because
yeah,
there are some players that come from high school and they go to play overseas, or maybe they go and play in college for 1 year and then they get into the draft and they're just not ready to be professionals.
right.
They're not ready for the league, whether that be mentally, whether that be literal skill level. I think that the 3 years for the women league in a way kind of helps the league, because if for 3 years in college you are a consistent strong player,
Mhm.
by the time you get to the league you're going to be good enough to advance the overall product that is the WNBA.
Okay.
So I agree, the fact that it's 1 year for men and 3 years for women is like blatant. It's just like kind of in your face with
Mhm,
it. It's not right. But I feel like it, that development that you get staying in college a little bit longer, I feel like does make sure that the right players, so to speak, are making it to the league.
mhm.
In my opinion, But go ahead.
So I think in this one, I can see that it would help them develop more. I agree with that. But I think for this one, it's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of look at sports in general and how funds are divided, not just in college level, but also when they start uh, at a younger age. How much emphasis is there on women's sports and having them develop and have the same kind of opportunity, uh, or just in general programs in school, like elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever it may be? How much of a discrepancy is there between the funding of female ones and male ones? Because I do think that, I guess to me, I see it more as an issue of it being, it's not just now that we're here at collegiate and now have to declare for the WNBA. I don't think it's just it's there. I think it starts way lower than that. I think it's being able to get little girls interested in sports and having that interest then be nourished rather than being told like, oh no, we don't even have the funding, or the guys are gonna get it just because guys are gonna get more attention to the school. And though I understand that argument, I think it's just not as simple as just, hey, they made it to college and now they have to declare for the WNBA, but their skill isn't as great. Okay, well, where would they skill be if maybe they had the same amount of resources as all the boys that are in the NBA did? You know, did they go to similar schools? Did they have similar programs? I think that just plays a factor that maybe we're not necessarily accounting for. So I think it's a much deeper one, and unfortunately, it's going to be one that, if they choose to address, is going to take much longer to kind of just get that a little bit more leveled.
That's definitely fair. That's definitely. I think you're right. I honestly think you're right. I think it starts from youth basketball. Like there are some women hoopers who, from the age of 6, 7, are just, they're probably better than the boys they play against. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But like over time, you're right. Like the different like prioritiz follow me on this, prioritization for the male athletes is just, it's a little higher the longer you go, and then it's like almost, are we manufacturing the skill
Yeah.
gap? I can respect that. I can respect that. So let me get your thoughts on this. Tracy McGrady, in an interview with Brianna Stewart, elite WNBA player, he was saying that a way, because let me preface this with saying this: the WNBA players make a lot less than NBA players,
Hmm.
obviously, But what people need to understand, what people need to understand is that's not just like we don't want to pay women athletes. The way that the bargaining agreement is determined is they get like almost percentages of the total amount that the NBA generates. The NBA generates a lot more money than the WNBA. That's just a fact.
Hmm.
It's just a fact. So obviously players are going to make a lot more money. Now, what Tracy McGrady said to Breonna Stewart essentially is that if they lowered the rim about 2 feet, that a lot of women would be able to dunk and do a bunch of crazy stuff that you see like Giannis or LeBron or whatever doing at the rim, and that would increase the overall popularity of the WNBA. How do you feel about that?
It's offensive. How would you feel if in your job you were told that in order for you to do it more successfully, we have to make exceptions to essentially the environment that you're in, that we have to just I guess I can't think of an example right at the top of my head, but we have to essentially modify everything in order for you to be more successful in your skill slash job. It's a little bit like you're talking down to me, like you're like, you know, a little bit dismissive.
So let me.
Hmm.
Okay, no, go ahead, go ahead,
I think
go
it's
ahead.
a little bit dismissive to just the talent that they have. I also think that when it comes to, I understand that, of course, the more views you get, the more people that you get to tune into the games, the more people that you get to show up, the more people you get to buy your jersey and stuff like that. It generates more revenue. So there's more revenue to split. But I've also seen that in the NBA, whatever revenue is gets split 50-50. 50 between the players, 50 between the league, the teams.
Mhm.
That's not the case in the WNBA. It's 80-20. So the players are only getting about 20% of that versus it's mostly going to just um, teams. And I guess, of course, they do have maintenance and stuff like that. But it's not as if there isn't revenues lower. But also at the same time, if I have $20 and I keep what 15 for myself and only give you five, there could be a little bit more fairness right there, right? So,
That's fair.
yeah, I think there's just with the WNBA, I think, of course, it's been around less than the NBA. I think they need to have a development plan for that to be just more successful. I don't think that it's a matter of they don't have the talent, they don't have the audience interest per se. Because when you talk about the world population, you have a good amount of females. It's not like we're the minority. I'm pretty sure we're still the majority. So
That's a fact.
it's not like there
That's a
isn't
fact.
an audience. It's just a matter of how do you lure the audience in. And I do think that lowering the rim would make it easier, of course, for them to dunk it, which would make the game a bit more exciting, which may draw more people in. However, I think it becomes a matter of risk reward. So I've already at least decided that it's offensive to the athletes to just basically say we're gonna need to like shorten it a bit for you to be able to just be great. Um, but I also just think that you gotta weigh the risks, right? The how much is it worth it?
I want to I want to challenge you a bit on this offensive thing because personally, I don't think it's very offensive.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you an example of real world,
Mhm.
and then I'm gonna give you an example of it as it pertains to the WNBA.
Mhm.
Real world. If you want to join the military, right?
Mhm.
You have certain requirements you need to do:
Right.
pull-ups, push-ups, a mile run.
Mhm.
There's a difference between men and women. For men, you have to do X amount of pull-ups.
Mhm.
For women, it's slightly lower. For men, you have to run the mile in between a certain amount of time. For women, it's lower.
Mhm.
Same WNBA. The ball they play with is smaller.
Mhm.
Now, do you think those things are offensive?
On a personal note, yes. However, the
Right?
I understand why they're there, but I think the difference between it being just having to also lower the rim is how far away from the game do you get? Are we still necessarily playing the same sport? how many differences do you have to make before it's no longer that uh it doesn't feel as to the core same sport type of energy, you know? When you start to make those differences, you're kind of creating a different sport or just at least a different view of the sport. You know, a lot of people would argue that sure it'll be fun to watch someone dunk, right, on the WNBA, but also if the rim is lowered, how much less impressive is it? Because you're already lessening how high they have to jump, right? So if Brittany Griner can dunk on the current rim right now, right? If we're lowering it,
She can.
you right, she's 6'9". I'm sure she can. Um, if we have to lower it, that same jump, that same dunk that she did, how much less impressive is it now that the rim is lower? She had to do
I
less.
think it's more impressive. I
Really?
think she'll have to do less, but I think it's more. I think it's more impressive. Right now, Brittany Griner can dunk, but it's like, your general big man dunk or big woman dunk,
Hmm.
rim grazer type dunk. If you lower the rim 2 feet, someone like Diana Taurasi is coming through the lane and putting Brittany Griner on a poster. Like, she's gonna make ESPN top 10. Like, she's gonna look like LeBron coming through the middle.
Hmm.
And I think that will boost the overall popularity of the WNBA. Like, if you see like someone like Brianna Stewart coming through and just windmill dunking on a center, you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, what was that? Like, I think it will increase viewership, and I think so. You got to really, to me, you got to kind of ask yourself, like, we're lowering the rim. Is that offensive? Do you care more about your pride of we want to be seen as just as good as the men, or do you want to really have the WNBA make more money? Do you want to have the players make more money? Because I do think that would increase the popularity of the NBA for what it is. And when Tracy McGrady said this, Brianna Stewart was definitely on your side. She said that it was offensive,
Hmm.
that they have skills,
Hmm.
that the game isn't all about dunking.
Hmm.
She expressed a lot of the same sentiments. But I think, like, my question is, like, at what point is it more about, do you really want the league to be more popular, or do you know what I mean? Or do you want to just kind of be it seen as we're playing the exact same game? Because to me, lowering the rim doesn't change the game. I still think that the WNBA players are great, way more skilled than me or any Joe Schmo at LA Fitness. You know what I mean? Any other non-professional athlete, for sure. I still think that, personally speaking, I'm not going to think any less of Sue Bird if they lower the rim 2 feet lower. You know what I mean?
You brought
I
up
think that I'm still going to view them as great players.
okay, yeah, I can understand that. But you brought up Joe Smo at LA Fitness, right? How impressive is it if uh LeBron comes into LA Fitness and dunks versus if he actually does it into the NBA room for you? Which one takes I
But
could
to me,
potentially
okay.
do that versus dude, you're in the NBA or a WNBA, you're at a different level than what just I can do. You know, it like this not like
Okay.
superhero, but kind of superhero, superhuman kind of like vibe that you get from just watching it. Because I don't look at LeBron, I don't look at the WNBA. My 5 foot self is not gonna ever dunk anything. But I think if I have to then all of a sudden just you know how they do those like halftime shows and they have people dunk it, but they give them like a trampoline. Not of
Yeah.
course so you're not giving them a trampoline, but kind of comparable. If you're still lowering something, then it takes less effort for me to get there, right? So if you still have the rim at the same level, but you're giving me a trampoline, I'm still trying less hard. It's still less impressive for me to get there. It takes less of me, my own skill, my own capability to do that. And I also think that like when it comes to just
Okay.
saying let's incorporate dunking, you also have to also just kind of understand the WNBA were I said tandem, right? Earlier. And we can still work in tandem, but we can still have our own definition of how we want the WNBA to be represented. No doubt that watching LeBron dunk, watching Zion dunk is going to be impressive. The dunk contest is usually what's more popular. Maybe the 3-point contest actually now, but they have an actual contest.
That's a fair point.
They have an actual contest for it at the All-Star game. But that's not what every athlete does in the NBA. I bet you that Clay is probably regretting having to dunk, right? So then you're for that same reason, you're kind of raising the risk of injury. They're already coming in later into their career into the WNBA, and then so they probably have a bit of a shorter gap, right? Now you're throwing in that they have to also dunk, right? You're increasing injury as well, the potential for injury. So I think it kind of comes down to just how much do you want to risk and give. Steph isn't a dunker. He's going to have a pretty set career for probably a decent amount of time still left, right? Like he's what, 35 right now? But he doesn't have to do all of this exceptionally superhuman jump 11,000 feet to make the crowd go wild. He just doesn't. And maybe the WNBA would like to take a route that's more like that.
And I can respect that point because I remember personally watching an NBA WNBA finals, and Sue Bird was looking a lot like Steph Curry to me. She hit like 8 threes in one of those finals games, and I was like falling out the edge of my chair. So like, to me, the skill level gap is not the issue. I am not. Obviously there is a little bit of a gap, but I feel like that is not why the WNBA isn't just as popular. But what I will say is, if you want to look at it, the face of the NBA still today is not Steph Curry, it's LeBron. If you want to look at it today, in my opinion at least, and probably a lot of people's, the best player in the NBA is not Steph, it's Giannis. You're talking about two big, strong, athletic guys who are dunking at the rim.
Mm-hmm.
That's elevating the league's popularity.
Right.
LeBron has been the face of the league for at least the last 10 to 15 years. And he's dunking. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, I think for your casual fan, obviously, if you're a fan of basketball, you're a fan of the sport, you're going to appreciate the skill. If you are a fan of the sport of basketball, you can watch like the national championship game and be like, Caitlin Clark is an absolute dog.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you can see the skill level that's just, you can see the skill level.
Yeah.
But to me, what you're trying to do by increasing the overall popularity of your league is you're trying to attract the casual fan, the person who's, I really like baseball, I really like
Mm-hmm.
football, but I watch basketball if it's on.
Mm-hmm.
What in my opinion, what they want to see is something that they can't do.
Right.
Like, regardless of skill gap, because the casual fan isn't going to acknowledge that Sue Bird would bust their ass
Mm-hmm.
in any type of 1-on-1, 5-on-5, she would mess them up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't want to acknowledge that. They want to be like, I want to see you jump through the air and windmill because I can't do that. They're thinking, I can go to the court and shoot a 3-pointer right now. That's what they're thinking. Obviously, not to the same
Yeah.
level, but in the casual fan's mind, that's how they're viewing it. Like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. That little dribble package, I can do that. What they want to see is LeBron go through and put Nurkic on a poster. I can't do that. You know what I mean? That's what the casual fan wants to see. And I think lowering the rim, you're giving them that, because even though obviously someone like like Diana Taurasi is like if you really played against her in real life, even as a hardcore
Yeah.
hooper as a male, if you're not a league type player, she's gonna embarrass you.
For
She's
sure.
gonna embarrass you. But like, the casual fan isn't gonna view it that way, because they're just like, oh, she's just doing a bunch of stuff that in their mind they can do. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying if they lowered the rim and they see Diana Taurasi put it behind her back and dunk on a 6'7" woman, they're gonna be like, whoa. You know what I mean? And I think that would matter in the overall popularity of the league.
I don't disagree with you that it would bring more fans probably, and it would have more highlights to show on Sports Center. But I think that it's a temporary fix. It's a fast fix, but I don't think that's necessarily just the only thing that can make them more successful or enhance WNBA. I also think that in terms of, yes, you can appreciate the actual act of dunking, but I think there would probably always be like a little asterisk that carries them around. It's like you can do that, but you can do that on a shorter rim. I think that asterisk would always follow them. So I think for me, yes, you could, and yes, you would probably get more fans, but I think it's just a short fix, and I think that there's other ways that they could probably do it to get more attention, more fans flowing into the WNBA. Like one of the things that I personally think that they could really take advantage of is using that All-Star weekend. The NBA players come into the All-Star weekend more like la 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 la. This is more of a break for them. We're not playing. It doesn't affect our actual season. We're just gonna showcase our talents. Like I can't remember who specifically was the one that like dunks the ball, but they had Luca on the mic, and he's like, "I can do that," just don't give me the chance. Um, so they're showcasing their talents. It's not a serious game. Some players may come in and they want to drop 50 and take it seriously, but um,
Whoa! Don't do that. I know because I know what you're doing. Go ahead. I know what you're doing. Don't do that. Go
my
ahead.
point being is that it's more of a fun experience for the players. It's not as serious. We're not gonna play some big dog defense on you. We're gonna have fun with it, and I think incorporating the WNBA into that would be a good thing. It would bring more attention to it. You already have a whole bunch of fans tuning in. You have a whole bunch of stars coming in as well. So it's a lot of chatter. It's a big event that they kind of build up to from the beginning of the season, and it's kind of like that little break, right? So I think incorporating them maybe into some of their challenges would probably be good good attention to them, would bring more fans. And the NBA has taken more of this like big brother approach with the WNBA, where they're like, we'll kind of introduce you. You have Steph making CarMax commercials with who is it? Sue Bird, I think,
She does he does have one with
and
Sue Bird.
Candace.
One I see a lot is
Yeah,
Candace. He has a lot one with Candace where she's knocking it out his
yeah,
hand, like
exactly,
the phone out his hand.
exactly. So
Yeah,
they've kind of
definitely.
already made it pretty.
Shout out to Steph Curry for
Yeah.
that.
They've kind of already made it pretty public that like that's kind of an approach that they want to take, and I can respect that. I just think that there's other ways that they could kind of like there's other opportunities where they can bring them in that would make the WNBA benefit as well. Showcasing those talents, making those names more popular, and I mean, granted, Candace does her own thing. She'll go on she'll be basically a commentator, sports analyst. She'll take that role as well. So she's making more opportunities for herself. And I think just how willing the NBA is to actually mesh those two and have them just kind of bounce off of each other would just be equally as beneficial.
Okay, I can respect it. I can definitely respect it. Uh, all that being said, and I just want this caveat thrown in here just because I think for me personally, someone who loves basketball, it's kind of funny.
Hmm.
I didn't watch a single men's college March Madness game.
Yeah,
Not one this year. But I watched the women's national championship game, LSU versus Iowa.
yeah,
Like it to me, it was entertaining. Granted, it wasn't as close as I would have
yeah,
thought, but I think that just goes to show that like women's basketball should be taken seriously. I
right.
think it's definitely on the rise, and their skill level should be taken
Hmm.
seriously. So, thank you for your opinions on that. So, let's transition again back to the NBA.
Okay.